Thank you all for being here for tonight's City Council meeting for the City of Philomath on October 10th of 2022. I want to wish you all happy Indigenous Persons Day and Columbus Day. And given that, I'm going to take the opportunity to do an acknowledgement. We are on the historic lands of Champinefu, Kalapuya peoples. And I want to honor the friends and colleagues that
Mayor,
I
just one
personally
moment.
have developed relationships with.
Wait a minute.
Ruth, I think it's on my end. I think it's on my end, Ruth.
Yeah, we can hear, but not clearly. Very echoey.
And just want to acknowledge or honor the friendships and the friends and colleagues that I've developed personal relationships with over the last 7 years of working with the tribes. And I especially want to recognize their efforts to overcome systemic efforts to erase their culture, their traditions, to remove their lands, their legal status, and to impose disease upon the peoples. I want to recognize their efforts to revitalize their culture, their language, and their traditions. They're still here, and the opportunities that they have offered to me through partnerships and friendships have enhanced my life in innumerable ways. I want to encourage all of you to learn more about their lives, their history, their culture. It's the least that we can do to honor the sacrifices that they've made that have allowed us to all be here and to thrive. But well, again, today's Indigenous Peoples Day, but first, before we get started any further, we're going to go ahead and get started with a roll call.
Jessica Andrade.
Present. I also wanted to let you know that there is audio coming from Chris's video screen.
Jessica, we are having technical
You can't
issues
hear
and we're
me?
exploring that now.
Thank you.
I know the sound is coming through on.
Jessica, you want to say something?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Teresa, do you want?
Yes, I'm here. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, roll call. Jessica Andrade.
Present.
Ruth Posey.
Here.
Matt Lehman.
Here.
David Lowe.
Here.
Teresa Nielsen.
Here.
Chaz Jones.
Here. Excellent. Well, it's great to have you all in the audience tonight. Appreciate you all being here. First thing on the business is that we have a proclamation, resolution 22-13, declaring Indigenous Peoples Day. And I understand that Councilor Andrade had a couple of proposed edits.
I do. And first of all, I just want to let you know ahead of time that I was one of the people who caught COVID at the conference. So if I start to lose my voice, that is why. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible and refer, I guess, City Recorder Ruth, are you able to read what I sent to the council earlier today?
So would you like
Is that readily available?
Would you like me to read that in the form of a motion that you're making?
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Councilor Andrade moves to amend resolution 22-13 to change the first whereas statement to read, therefore be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Philomath proclaims Monday, October 10th as Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Philomath.
Second.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Andrade and seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any discussion?
And Councilor Andrade to assist her, her justification for the amendment was it's a more unifying statement and matches the Veterans Day proclamation format.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, it appears to me that the edit applies only to the therefore be it resolved statement and not to the first statement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. If I may amend the motion, in addition to that statement, I believe the signature line should be changed to simply Chas Jones, Mayor, comma, Mayor.
So that's a proposed amendment to the motion. Let's see. And so I'll second that. So we have a motion on the table and a proposed amendment to the motion. Any further discussion? Councilor Andrade.
I don't think you can see Councilor Bisco's hand raised, but it's raised. Also, I think that goes completely against the motion that I just made of it being unifying. So I would suggest otherwise, but I mean, I don't. That is what I think.
Thank you. And Councilor Causey.
It's just merely a signature line, and obviously all the members of the council are not going to sign it. The mayor would be signing it on behalf of the council. So I don't see his signature as not being unifying.
Oh, Councilor Bisco, sorry, did we have Councilor Bisco on the roll call?
I did not. I didn't realize that she had entered the room. Chris must have let her in.
Great.
Yeah, and so that's why my hand was raised, as I was here at roll call. I just didn't hear my name, so just wanted to make note of that.
Oh, thank you. We didn't see you present, so appreciate you speaking up or raising your hand there. Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Any further discussion on that? Or Chris, do you have a thought? I'm all in favor of amending the motion. Please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And I can't tell if Councilor Bisco voted or.
Her hand is up.
Okay.
Stop for aye.
Got it. So it looks like that motion to amend passed unanimously. So any further discussion on the motion at hand? No, all in favor of passing the motion to amend the resolution, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And both Councilor Bisco also.
Yes.
So the motion carried unanimously. Excellent. With that, I'm going to go ahead and read the motion or read the resolution. Resolution 22-13, a resolution proclaiming the 2022 Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas Oregon and the city of Philomath was founded upon land inhabited and stewarded by many bands of the Indigenous people since time immemorial. And whereas Philomath was founded upon the lands and the waters of the Marys River Band of the Kalapuya, the descendants of which included citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And whereas the city wishes to recognize the city's past, ongoing, and future partnerships with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon. And whereas our school district honors these partnerships and our shared history by incorporating tribal history and culture into our school education programs in partnership with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. And whereas in recognition of our interests for continuing to grow partnerships between the city and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, both tribes gifted official tribal flags to the city of Philomath. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations, sponsored the International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas. And whereas the city supports the principles contained in the United Nations Declaration of Rights on Indigenous Peoples endorsed by the United States on December 16th, 2010. And whereas the declaration recognizes the right of Indigenous peoples to the dignity and diversity of cultures, traditions, histories, and aspirations, which shall appropriately be reflected in education and public information, and promotes efforts to combat prejudice, eliminate discrimination, and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relations among Indigenous peoples and all other segments of society. Therefore, be it resolved, City Council proclaim Monday, October 10th as an Indigenous Peoples' Day in the city of Paloma. Be it further resolved that the council encourages all residents to learn about the history of the tribes and Indigenous peoples that traditionally cared for these lands, dated October 10th, 2022. Thank you all for that. Next on the agenda, we have a Veterans Day proclamation, and
We need a motion to actually approve that resolution.
did we not do that?
You approved the amendment that Councilor
Okay.
Andrade proposed.
Got it. So we should just make a motion to
Approve the
approve
resolution.
the proclamation.
So moved.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Lowe,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Lehman. All in favor of passing resolution 22-13, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. With that, we have a Veterans Day proclamation, and we bring this to the City Council at this time because of the dates of our future council meetings and how it lays with Veterans Day. And so we have this Veterans Day proclamation. And I have talked with Mayor Neiman, former Mayor Neiman, and asked if he would be okay if we could pass it tonight, but instead of reading it tonight, that he's going to present it before the presentation that he's going to be discussing with us later this evening. So I'm not planning to actually read this, but we still would like to pass it. So looking for a motion to accept this proclamation and pass resolution 2214.
So moved.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Lehman and seconded by Councilor Lowe. Any further discussion? Councilor Cox.
I believe that Councillor Andrade had edits to the motion or edits to the proclamation.
Councilor Andrade, are you with us here? So she might be frozen.
Yeah.
City Recorder, do you have a?
Second read, but the email that she sent. There is a correction in that the 2021 proclamation version did not have the word sacred on the 6th whereas, and so that should be removed from the proclamation. And Councilor Andrade also wanted to split the resolution statement into two. This would be in the form of a motion, with the first statement reading, therefore be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Paloma proclaims November 11th, 2022 be recognized as Veterans Day and proclaims its gratitude for all veterans. And the second statement reading, be it further resolved that the council encourages all residents to honor the valor and sacrifice of our veterans, thank the veterans in their lives, and to take a few moments to learn more about the sacrifices made by our veterans.
Okay. So we have a Councilor Andrade's. Would you like to verify that's the motion you'd like to make?
I think she's had to drop out.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for, I'll make that motion that we modify the resolution as proposed by Councilor Andrade.
Second.
So we have a motion made by myself and seconded by Councilor Kazi.
And I can note that her reason for splitting the resolution statement was to make it match the structure of the Indigenous Peoples' Day proclamation.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'm all in favor of amending the proclamation as proposed. Please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. So with that, I'd like to pass the proclamation or go ahead and accept the resolution as the Veterans Day proclamation as amended.
So moved.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Kazi,
We've already got a motion and a second on the table.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All in favor? All in
Sorry,
favor?
who was the second?
Low. Counselor Low.
Thank you.
We have a third. All in favor of passing resolution, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Looks like motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we have, oh, I'm sorry, we also had regarding Indigenous Peoples Day, Councilor Nielsen had a comment that she wanted to make.
Yes, just briefly. On Friday, October 7th, we had a chance to hear from the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, represented by Buddy Lane. He came and did a professional development for the Philomath School District, and it was really pretty spectacular, informative and enlightening and educating, and I don't know, it was very, very purposeful in his presentation. It was a multiple hour professional learning opportunity for our school district, not all the teachers and administrators, and time well spent learning more about the history of the tribes that are part of our land and heritage. And we really appreciate, I really appreciate, and as a district, as a liaison for our district, really appreciate Buddy and his sharing of knowledge and insights with us that made a tremendous difference in how we will view, and I would think how the district will view the curriculum and the education of our students going forward in relation to the Indigenous peoples.
Great, Mr. Lane is really a great speaker.
Absolutely.
Thank
you.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we have Mr. Neiman here to talk about the Veterans Day event.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jones, and thanks, Council, for having me. I think a lot of the information is probably contained in your packet with both the flyer and the information that the item summary that Councilor Andrade and Mr. McMorrin, who's co-chair with her on the committee, the Inclusivity Committee, put together in terms of what the request, just as a general overview. The intent is to have Dr. Robert Bartlett travel down from Spokane here to Philomath on November 8th and spend the night, be able to set up and present in the Scout Lodge on the 9th. So the Scout Lodge has been very gracious to serve as a host. The Benton County History Museum also wanted to host, but I think size-wise, the Scout Lodge might be a little bit bigger facility. Interfor has graciously stepped forward in the community and provided $1,000 for an honorarium for Dr. Bartlett to speak and share his expertise, which I was very grateful for. And so we're we came to the committee here in the last couple weeks, exploring whether or not the council would consider providing travel and expenses for Dr. Bartlett in the amount listed in the memo. And again, it had kind of switched quickly from being an online only to being an in-person event. And I think generally the feedback was it was going to be a more quality event in that case with doing in person. So with that, I'll certainly open it up to the council for questions or any information I can provide. I'll share.
So, Mr. Neiman's requesting a $500 stipend to cover travel expenses Councilor Kazi?
Yes, I would like to request that the stipend for travel be increased to $600. I checked the Hilton Garden Inn for 2 nights would be $416. So that seems a little skinny for me for 3 days and meals. So I'd like to make a motion to increase the stipend to $600.
Want to make just a wholesale motion regarding the approval?
Yes, I move that the city council allocate $600 from the appropriate budget category, public expenses budget.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Towards a stipend to support Dr. Robert Bartlett's travel expenses for a speaking engagement presenting on the Triple Nickels for a Veterans Day event in Philomath.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilor Kazi and Councilor Nielsen beat everybody else to it with a second. So appreciate that. Any further discussion? Is that really that raised hand for Councilor Kazi?
Yes.
Councilor Visco? Councilor Visco?
Yes, I'm just wondering if we can clarify which budget line item that would come out of.
It was mentioned the city council budget.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
Mayor, one additional item I think that's noteworthy at this moment in time is of the triple nickels who served, there was only one fatal casualty who was killed in the line of duty. That soldier's name was Private First Class Malvin Brown, who was a medic. Interestingly enough, he was born October 11th of 1920. He enlisted in the Army on October 11th, 1942, and tomorrow is his birthday. So he'll 80 years after he enlisted. It's I think important to reflect on him and his remarkable service, serving our state and our country in a very difficult period.
Thank you. It's probably his 102nd birthday.
True.
Thank you
Happy
very
birthday.
much. Happy birthday. So with that, all in favor of allocating this budget to this effort, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Name. I appreciate you being here and appreciate you pulling this together. And also for taking that proclamation and being able to reciting that prior to that event.
You bet.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone. I appreciate the support.
Thank you. So with that, we have opportunity for public comment. And I'm going to read our disclaimer, which I do before every meeting, every time we have public comment. This time is intended for individuals to speak and for council to listen. Members of the council will not discuss topics or make decisions during this time, but may make comments or requests, may take comments or requests under advisement, assign topics to a future council or a standing committee agenda, or request staff to take an action. Comments about a topic scheduled for a public hearing should be given during the public hearing, not during the visitor's comments. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. A 30-second warning will be provided. Speakers should provide their name and city of residence. Providing the council with a written copy of your comments prior to or during the meeting is always appreciated. Those that attend public meetings are required to adhere to the council's rules and proceedings and observe the same standards of decorum as members of the council. Further, at the discretion of the presiding officer, members of the public who fail to observe these rules of procedure will be asked to discontinue speaking and will not be allowed to speak again for the remainder of the meeting. So with that, we have two folks signed up. We have first Kristen Knudsen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Kristen Knudsen. I live in Philomath. So the question I have for the council tonight is, do the conditions of approval matter in Philomath? I recently did a public records request for the contractual and financial guarantees for the Heather Glen subdivision and for the affidavit the city manager was supposed to sign stating that he had secured these agreements. And this public records request resulted in the fact that the city recorder notified me that these records do not exist. The city does not have these documents or any record of them. We can officially add these to the list of missing documents. This is very important because it confirms the conditions of approval for Heather Glen were not followed by the city manager. The conditions were not done in the correct order to avoid future issues. This seems to be a pattern with new subdivisions in Philomath and is creating difficult issues and in some cases extreme hardship for the citizens of Philomath. We can officially add these latest things to the list of missing documents. 0 for 10 non-remonstrance agreements, no construction deferral agreement for Heather Glen for 11th Street improvements, despite the city manager claiming to have this document on multiple occasions and in the public record. No 191,363 financial guarantee, despite the city manager being required to secure it as a part of the conditions of approval and being reminded by the engineers in their emails to secure these agreements multiple times. No contractual agreements with Heather Glen to make the 11th Street improvements, despite the city manager being required by the conditions of approval to secure these. No affidavit from the city manager stating that he had secured the contractual and financial guarantees for the 11th Street improvements for Heather Glen. This affidavit from the city manager was also required by the conditions of approval. If the conditions were followed in the correct order, not before or after the subdivision was complete or in progress, we would not be faced with the current issues. In the last meeting, Mr. Workman stated in the video at the council meeting at the hour of 2 hours and 56 minutes in the video, he stated that Mr. Dad could have made these improvements 3 years ago or choose to wait.
30 seconds.
According to the Philomath City Charter and the powers and duties of the city manager, he is to implement policy and keep the council advised of the affairs that need and the affairs and needs of the city. This is item number 4 in the city charter of his job description. It is not to create policy or to ignore the conditions of approval that have been implemented by the Planning Commission. So I ask you to please address, do the conditions of approval matter in Philomath?
Thank you, Ms. Knudsen. Appreciate that. And if I remember correctly, it's relevant for the folks in the audience. I believe it was a July 10th meeting that the city council gave Mr. Dowd 1 year to provide to meet those obligations. Wanted to mention that just for the folks in the audience. Next on the public comment, we have Mr. Mark Knudsen. Greetings.
Hello, Mark Knudsen, Philomath. The city of Philomath received a written estimate in 2018 for the 11th Street improvements for Heather Glen for $191,263 before the subdivision received its final approval. This number is important because you cannot understand how much of a financial incentive was being offered to Heather Glen without having that number to compare it to. This estimate was provided so that the city manager would know how much of a financial guarantee he needed to get from Heather Glen to meet the requirements of the conditions of approval. It was also required to sign an affidavit stating he had done so. Instead, he chose to try to subsidize the development with a massive discount by trying to include them in a local improvement district under false circumstances for amounts ranging from $133,000 to as low as $24,012, which would have been a savings for Heather Glen of $167,250 $167,251 on work that was estimated at $191,000. That's quite a discount at the expense of the city. Almost every assessment option was well below 100,000 and less than half of the estimated amount. Compare those numbers to the $191,000 estimate and tell me how it was going to save the city money. The opposite is true. Who authorized him to offer this deal on work that was already required by the city? The city manager claimed on multiple occasions to have that he had 10 non-remonstrance agreements for Heather Glen when he had 0. That information was not trustworthy. The city manager also claimed that he had a construction deferral agreement with Heather Glen for 11th Street improvements, even though that information was not trustworthy. He could not be trusted to follow the conditions of approval or get a financial guarantee from Heather Glen. He could not be trusted to get a contractual guarantee from Heather Glen. He could not be trusted to provide the city with an affidavit that he had done his job, guaranteeing that he had done his job. If we cannot trust him in all of those examples, what can we trust? I noticed when I was reviewing the city charter that the city manager is required to have a bond. I would like to confirm that he has one and what it covers. Because the city manager chose to ignore getting the contractual and financial guarantees and the affidavit, does his bond cover the 11th Street improvements if the developer doesn't do it? Maybe that is a question for the city attorney. I would encourage the council and the mayor to let the citizens of Philomath know if you are supportive of the city manager having the kind of broad authority
30
to act
seconds.
on his own and choose to ignore the conditions of approval and offer a massive discount under false circumstances, and what you feel your role should be in enforcing city government accountability. Ignoring these examples of inappropriate conduct can give the impression that you are more interested in protecting the city manager than you are the citizens. I would recommend the council form a committee to do its due diligence and formally look into these matters of public record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knudsen. So with that, Mr. Bill, you had a relevant email. Did you want to follow up on? Did you have a relevant email on that topic?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Knudsen had sent an email to all of us,
Yeah.
council, to us. I responded to Ms. Knudsen, as I try to do with everybody
Yeah.
that writes in, and I'm included. And I just thanked her for sending in what she did, and there's a lot of effort to do it.
So I was thinking, I thought there was something else, but it's fine. With that, really appreciate we're going to close public comment, and now we have a presentation by the Justice System Improvement Program. Thank you, County Commissioner and Sheriff. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We do have a slide presentation. I'm assuming that.
We're just gonna have you wing it.
You can do that too.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Whatever works.
It's coming up.
I've got it. Jesse? Okay, I'm going to that table for Brad as well. The small one with the
Put my
wheels.
glasses on. It's not funny.
I'm over here for Mr. Fuqua. I usually get to go over there. I've neglected to do that.
So in future meetings, we're gonna relatively soon have publications available.
Yeah, I apologize.
They look nice.
They're going to look nice. Yeah. We thank you to Public Works, and I won't name our electricians, but they were supposed to be here last week and didn't make it. So we have black screens instead of colored screens. So
Right.
the presentation is in the back. Sorry to the audience. We're in a work in progress still.
We're very familiar with that at the county. It's definitely been a work in progress. Well, I wanted to thank you all for hosting us here tonight. We hope to keep this to 10 minutes as allotted on the agenda. I've been involved with the Justice System Improvement Program for the county pretty much since I was elected. When I first ran, the issue that was most on people's minds was community mental health issues and individual mental health needs. And then when I ran for the second time, housing and homelessness and community safety joined that list. We put together an assessment to address that system. Move to the next slide, please. During the assessment period, we came up with this vision based on a series of community meetings over the course of a year and working with an advisory group, really emphasizing balance of treatment and accountability for any adult in custody in our system. We aspire to have an effective, equitable, and safe system where the outcomes are healthy and stable individuals and improved community safety. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Justice System Improvement Planning process started in 2018, and the assessment looked at everything from an individual's first encounter with law enforcement all the way through the system and to release back into the community. Our efforts were data-based and aligned with best practices from the literature and from other comparator counties around Oregon and around the country. And since 2019, when we finished the assessment, we've hosted nearly 30 meetings and presentations to engage community input and to discuss what we learned about the shortcomings of our own system and what we needed to do to remedy them. This fall, we're hosting forums all around the community again and presentations like this to share where we are now with respect to updating our programs and facilities in order to address those gaps that we learned about in the systems assessment. We also want to be able to answer any questions and hear your thoughts about the facilities that we're considering in the upcoming bond measure that we're considering from May 2023. To date, the Board of Commissioners have chosen a site for the Community Safety and Justice Campus, and we've also chosen to borrow for the courthouse and district attorney's office outside of the bond measure and begun the design process both for the courthouse, DA's office, and for a crisis center. The proposed facilities that will be in a bond will expand mental health resources for adults in custody, restore accountability for offenders, and improve emergency response and community safety. So next slide, please. We are building a new crisis center at downtown Corvallis, 3rd and Van Buren, which will provide short-term stabilization, referrals, and supports for ongoing services. This is going to be a very vital resource that will address a gap in our current system. Services will be voluntary. People can either self-refer, be referred by family, law enforcement, or others. Currently in Benton County, we only have one psychiatric crisis respite bed, which is woefully inadequate for our 100,000 approximately population. And Good Samaritan Regional Medical Center has inpatient care, but again, limited beds, or the emergency room as stabilization locations for mental health crisis. The emergency room provides a higher level of care than is needed for most people that are in crisis. And in fact, it can be pretty traumatizing to be there because it's such a constraining environment that is not set up for people that are suffering that kind of crisis. They also don't belong in jail. So the crisis center may serve as a treatment center alternative to both incarceration and to emergency room at much lower cost than would be afforded in either of those other facilities. Next slide, please. So once we completed the systems assessment and a lot of community engagement, we had a bit of a roadmap to the scope of the issues, and we decided to take iterative action. In May of 2021, we had a local option levy countywide on the ballot, and that levy was an early renewal because we wanted to give ourselves a lot of runway to be able to fund the services, the enhanced services that you see here. Our portion of the co-response program that we are running with the Corvallis Police Department to respond to folks in mental health crisis with a mental health provider and a police officer, for instance, crisis intervention training and training for response to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a pretrial program with the sheriff's office and so forth. Then in May 2023, the bond measure will provide for the facilities that actually are needed in order to put some of these new programs into effect. A new correctional facility, sheriff's office and emergency operations center, co-located on the Community Safety and Justice Campus, and of course, the expanded crisis center downtown. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to the sheriff.
Our county averages 8,000 to 9,000 crimes each year. In 2020, nearly 9,000 offenses were reported, and not surprisingly, in 2022 Benton County surveys, crime was one of the highest priorities identified in the community. Next slide, please. I'll point out right now, Commissioner Ojo does a lot of the heavy lifting here. The trend in Benton County is growing concern. Failed to appear rates are up 132% since 2014 and has grown consecutively in 6 years. And I'll touch on that in a minute. The national average for failed to appear rates 5%. We have a critical lack of accountability in Benton County, and that's due to the common use of cite and release. That's what we do in law enforcement. I started with Corvallis Police Department in 1997, and I was trained in 1997 to issue citations versus taking people to jail, because the jail hasn't increased in size. But so as a result, we would give citations to people versus taking them to jail because it would shut the jail down. So as far back as 97 when I started, that was a problem. This is just a continuing trend. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask Chief Rubin. He started with Corvallis Police Department as well as one of my training officers and trained me how to do that. And so that's just habitual. The new officers starting right now are learning to issue citations versus taking people to the facility. Next slide. Rather than sending our adults in custody to another jail outside the area, which we currently do, I rent 22 beds in Norcor, which is the facility in the Dalles, and I rent 10 beds in Polk County. We need a therapeutic trauma-informed facility to be more effective, and we need to keep the adults in our community. That way they have access to their families and their support system, to include Benton County behavioral health and ongoing treatments for these folks once they're released back into our community. The current jail capacity of 40 beds is too small, with only 2 holding cells and 2 waiting cells. What this means for our criminal justice system, our community, is we have 2 individuals who need to be stabilized before being moved to a housing unit. We essentially have to shut down the jail. I have 2 holding cells in the hallway and 2 holding cells in a waiting room. And in a community with 100,000 people, if I have 4 people in the facility that have had too much to drink, under the influence of drugs, or have suffered from some sort of behavioral mental health issue, it shuts my facility down until they have an opportunity to sober up or see a mental health or behavioral health professional. Next slide, please. I'll go back to you.
We've heard in previous presentations from community members the question about how all of this is going to be funded. And one of the things that we're very happy to be able to say is that we've been working to maximize state and federal funds as much as possible, so that there's a lesser burden for the rest of the community. So we have raised about 40% of the total projected cost, 170 million total cost for the Community Safety and Justice Campus and Crisis Center, from other funds, including a component that will be direct borrowing for the courthouse and the DA's office. But the remaining costs are about 95 to 100 million. And that final facilities package that will comprise that bond measure will be determined by the Board of Commissioners in either December or January. And the proposed bond measure will then be put on the ballot for voters in May of this upcoming year. If we were to pass a bond measure of 95 million, it would cost approximately $138 per year for the median average home, with the tax assessed value of $266,000. Back to you.
Next slide, please. So in January of 2022, we finalized the selection of the new Community Safety and Justice Campus, which is 1 mile north of downtown Corvallis by the Hewlett-Packard campus there. Now, the campus is envisioned to co-locate community safety and justice facilities, including the new courthouse, district attorney's office, a new correctional facility, sheriff's office, and emergency operations center. And access to the facility will be off of Highway 20. The proposed correctional facility building will be 1 story with higher ceilings in the housing area. And the concept plan also it shows, and you can see it here on the back side, for additional capacity in the future if needed. Next week, we'll be hosting a community safety forum with a focus on our efforts to improve the accountability and emergency response resources. It'll be at 6 o'clock at Linus Pauling Middle School. And I do encourage everybody who has any questions to either be there in person or be there online. It'll be an opportunity to ask more questions and hear from a broader range of folks other than the commissioner and I. Appreciate your time. Any questions?
Just when, how can we as a council best help you get this done?
Well, once we make our decisions about what's in and out of that bond measure, I'm sure we will be asking to come back and get on the agenda again. I would be wonderful to have an endorsement from the council as a whole of the bond measure. And short of that, we will be knocking on individual doors and making phone calls to you all for your support.
And I personally would be happy to help with that. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Council Pisco has a question.
Councilor Bisco?
I don't have any questions, but I did want to express my gratitude for Commissioner Ogerow and Sheriff Van Arsdale for making this presentation this evening. I've had the privilege and the opportunity to work with both of them in this process as it's being developed, both through the Willamette Criminal Justice Council and through some of the public forums that have been held. And I genuinely believe that when people understand what our current situation is with our facilities and the need that we currently have and the expenses because of how we're being required to operate at this time, that it isn't going to be difficult for us to encourage our community to support this investment. So I look forward to this next step and how we can support, and thanks again.
Thank you.
And so you presented a dollar amount per home. I think the average is 266,000. Is that the median home price, or why did you
That
decide
is the
that number?
median home price. I don't think that you can find a home for that price.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's the median tax assessed value. Yes. So that's a qualified number.
Yeah, seems like that would be it'd be worth trying to make that sound like something that someone could relate to more than.
I don't disagree.
Right, thank you so much. Any other questions for me? We appreciate you being here tonight. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
With that, we have our consent agenda. And I believe that you have a suggestion to pull.
Yes, I'd like to pull agenda item to the September 12, 2022 City Council meeting minutes off of the consent agenda. I went back and looked at them, and there are some revisions that need to be made.
Okay. And then Council Andrade.
And we're supposed to revisit the August 8th minutes from the city council meeting as well.
Okay. And so pull off September 12th, and then do you want to, Council Andrade, did you have comments on August 8th?
Yes, we discussed it last meeting, and the city recorder was kind enough to put a bunch of closed captions in our packets so that we could resolve the issue.
Thank you.
Are you looking for a motion, or how did you want to do this?
Yeah, I'm looking for it in the packet myself.
But a motion should always be welcome.
But yeah, so a motion, if you have a specific motion, that'd be great.
My motion is the same from last meeting. Let me locate it really quickly, unless the city recorder has it on hand.
If you're looking for the closed caption from the meeting question, it's at the very end.
I-11. Under correspondence.
Thank you. It'll take me a long time to find.
So my my motion is actually, it's on the September 12th minutes on page 61. If you look at the very top, it's like the first line, to amend agenda item for the August 8th, 2022 City Council minutes page 59, line 39, to read, identifying potential causes of attrition in meeting attendance.
So we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? Seeing none, motion fails. So with that, are there any other edits proposed? So we go ahead and pass the consent agenda with minutes from August 8th and September 26th.
So moved.
So moved. Motion made by Councilor Lehman,
Second.
second by Councilor Causey. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. And I don't know how Councilor Fisco.
So Mayor, I abstain from this vote.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. I wasn't going to go there. So I wasn't thinking about abstentions. So I appreciate that. So motion carries. And with that, we will move on to the unfinished business with an Inclusivity Committee vacancy. Councilor Andrade, did you want to speak to that?
I would like to speak after someone introduces this topic. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, so this position has been, I understand this position has been open since June. It was brought to our attention in August. We failed to request the staff open an announcement to fill this position, or we didn't take any action. And then we still haven't taken any action. And so we now have a vacant spot. Chris, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, excuse me if I can find my voice. As noted in the agenda item summary, as close as we are right now, I mean, we would typically open up positions for committees in December to fill them in January. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do a 1 month or less than a month appointment of any sort. So the recommendation from staff at this point is just to leave the position vacant and just until we fill all of the positions the first of the year, we would just advertise and promote it with the other committee vacancies. I will add to just to save Councilor Andrade's voice a little bit. On several occasions, she's brought concerns about how the membership's made up, and I think that it would be helpful for the Inclusivity Committee to maybe have another discussion about that. And again, leaving the vacancy open at this time gives them a little bit of time to maybe readdress that and look through that and maybe come to the City Council with a different recommendation on how to proceed. So it buys a little bit of time. There's really no rush to get somebody filled there. I just felt it was important to get it back in front of the City Council, just so I didn't want to just have it not be spoken about and be forgotten. So the recommendation again from staff is just to get a formal approval from the City Council to leave that position vacant at this time.
Thank you. Councilor Andrade, did you want to add something to that now?
Yes,
or
thank you. Yes, no, I do. Thank you. I appreciate you coming back to me. And thank you, Chris. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that this has been a concern, and this has been something that I personally would have liked to have seen discussed, honestly, in both places, Inclusivity Committee and City Council, and to be able to come together and have that conversation, which is why I have brought this before the council before. I would like some help in understanding why this is another time in which I've repeatedly asked that Inclusivity Committee business, anytime it comes before the City Council, to please include me in this, because to exclude your co-chair, your council co-chair, who is the static person in bringing things to the council, it's very hurtful, it's very dismissive, and I would like that to change. I know that people are busy, and I know that a lot of the times we just run short on time, but I'm please asking once again to please include me on these things, because I was definitely very extremely surprised and disappointed to see this here. Granted, I am very grateful to Chris for suggesting the city manager for, bringing up these concerns of committee structure. If anyone could explain, that would be appreciative.
Yeah, I'll just add that I don't think it's a surprise that it was there. I brought it up during the Inclusivity Committee meeting that we needed to discuss it, and that I don't think it's any surprise at all. And then you also mentioned that you were wanting to submit a report or something. I'm guessing that you didn't do so before the time that the packet was coming out, and so it's probably time to put something in. But
I think just for context, before we get into it too much, when it was first brought up that the vacancy was there, I don't think that staff even learned about that until several weeks after it had been reported to the chair, which was fine. But then when it was made known, then we went to the Inclusivity Committee and talked about it there. And there was some discussion about a report coming forward to the city council. I think, I don't want to put words in Commissioner Andrade's mouth, but I believe the intent was she was going to prepare a report or something for the city council to talk about the membership and, do we want to fill the vacancy the way we've done it before? Is there some other mode to look at this at? And then if I recall, when she came to that council meeting, she reported that she hadn't had time to prepare a report, but she did make a motion at that meeting for the city council to hold a work session and talk about the Inclusivity Committee more generally, how it was doing, talked about attrition and certain things. And that motion was declined by the city council to not have that work session, which left Councilor Andrade kind of with no progress. And so it went back. There was just a small conversation about it at the Inclusivity Committee meeting, but nothing, comprehensive by any means. And again, I was responsible for putting on the agenda for tonight's meeting, just because, again, it had been another month or two since this would come back before the council. And I wanted to get clarity for staff's perspective on whether to continue to push the issue or to just get guidance from the council tonight to just leave the vacancy sit until we get to the first of the year. So I'm responsible for the agenda for this month. And I recognize there's maybe just some confusion on how things were handled in the past.
Yeah. But I'll just note that I've told you that I think it needs to be on the agenda numerous times. So I'm not putting it on you by any means. Councilor, or anybody else want to comment before Councilor Andrade? Councilor Cousin?
I'd like to move that the Inclusivity Committee vacancy be left open until the first of the year.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Cousin, second by Councilor Lehman. I see that Councilor Andrade has her hand up. Councilor Andrade?
Yes, thank you. I support the motion very much. Thank you. But what I'm getting at here in this, in the bigger issue of please talking to me as your Inclusivity Committee standing council co-chair before bringing things to the council, like that's just a bigger issue. That's a communication issue. This is part of what I've been talking about how there are better ways that we can support our Inclusivity Committee. I would like to read to you part of an email that I sent on September 27th, right after our Inclusivity Committee meeting, in which I emailed Chris, the city manager, and CC'd the mayor on it, specifically about Inclusivity Committee business, in which I talk about the Indigenous Peoples Day Proclamation, the Veterans Day Proclamation, and the Triple Nichols presentation. And at the very end, I said, as we discussed in our committee meeting earlier this evening, one of the agenda item topics for our next Inclusivity Committee meeting is committee membership recruitment and retention. This ties directly into the mayor's comments made earlier this evening about needing to fill the committee vacancy and the potential for that to come before council in the near future. In italics, if there are plans to add the topic of filling the Inclusivity Committee vacancy to the October 10th, 2022 City Council meeting, I respectfully ask you to notify me as council co-chair of the committee so that I may be involved in the process of bringing the topic to the council. Please let me know if you would like any additional information from me. And I'd just like to say that the main reason I'm bringing this up now is because I send emails like these and I don't get a reply. I don't get what I ask for. What I need in order to help make our committee do the things that our committee, like, in order to help our committee do the things that we've been wanting to do. So I ask this in this setting so that all council is aware that I am asking this of all of you and of staff. Please help me help our Inclusivity Committee do the things we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Andrade. And I did get that, and I totally forgot, and we didn't really talk about what was going to be on the agenda this time because of the LLC meeting. So we didn't really have an in-depth conversation on that. So we have a motion on the table. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have a topic on the agenda under new business on the downtown streetscape project business survival guide.
Okay.
Chelsea.
Yes, during the September 14th Public Works Committee meeting, which I sadly missed, I was supposed to be there, but I did watch it. Committee members, staff, and a number of downtown business owners or representatives attended the meeting to talk about the downtown streetscape communication efforts during the project. We presented some ideas to them for what our plans were, and they added some additional ideas, most of which have been captured in the agenda item summary. After that meeting, the city manager and I met with the project manager from ODOT to talk about expectations, the groundbreaking ceremony that was coming up at that point. And we had a really good meeting about talking about collaboration with ODOT, what our expectations are to get information from them and the contractor. And so they are working behind the scenes with their team to see what exactly they're able to do. It sounds like they'll be able to kind of head up the primary digital newsletter information, which we'll share in some various formats which are listed here. And they will be in close contact with us and will assist us with getting information from the contractor if we happen to have issues with that, so that we can share that with the community and business owners, of course, who will be impacted by the project. So what I'm asking for is it's been to through this venue, and we've summarized ideas here, is just for support to move forward with this. If there's anything else that anyone has thought of that they would like to add, we welcome that information now, and we will be just using this to go forward during the project to make sure that we're checking these boxes and keeping up with our communications in as many ways as we can.
Thanks. Thank you, Councilor Lowe.
Thank you, Chelsea. I know in Public Works, we sat in with the group and heard what you were talking about, and I think this is a great plan. One thing that I did think about that after the fact, and I'll bring it up now since you asked,
yeah.
And I know we're going to notify businesses and residents in the affected area, but have we considered what traffic detours might look like? Say for local folks that live on College Street and Pioneer, whatever, and they decide, well, I'm going to just skip this and go up around. Are we going to? You thought about that?
Yes, we hope to be getting, and of course, we don't want to promise anything yet because we haven't had a pre-construction meeting yet with the contractor. But what we hope for is that we're going to be getting regular updates for projecting a week or two out on where they will be on each day. We all know construction can change, but that we'll be able to put that information on the website and try to get people used to going there, share that on Facebook to direct people to the website. And so, yes, that you would be able to look ahead and say, this week, it looks like I'm not going to be able to take my normal route. That's really important too for, buses, school, and our community buses from Corvallis. So yes, that's our intention, is to share that kind of information.
If I could add to that, the city's engineer on this project, Murray Smith, who's had another name change, by the way. They did do a full, as required by ODOT, they did do a full traffic management plan for this project. And in that plan, it identifies detours, potential detours, and lays all that out for the contractor. It's up to the contractor to adhere to or submit a revised plan, which is why Chelsea's being careful. Say we don't want to commit what's going to be the alternative routes or whatnot, because the contractor does have a say in that. But that plan has been determined. They've had conversations with ODOT, with the city, with Benton County on what that would look like. For example, a detour down 19th Street to Chapel. What is that going to do to affect county traffic? And so a lot of that pre-work has been done. We just don't know what that's going to look like quite yet. And we, part of this focus has been getting that information out ahead of people so we don't have surprises. And I think the most benefit we can give at this point is to not commit that people's lives won't be impacted. They will be. We just want to let them know when and to what extent, so we can make plans accordingly as best as we can. But a lot of that's been thought through. We just don't know the details quite yet.
Are there going to be any efforts to communicate with residences rather than just businesses to let them know what the plan is?
Yes, I think what we will try to do to start it with is do a mailing of some sort. It will be we have to pick an area to do, but we'll try to do it in the businesses and residences that are most affected in the area, just to let them know where they can get the information, because obviously not everyone is following the city's Facebook page, but we will rely on other groups that we know in the area to share that information. So we'll be making connections with some of the groups in the area. The Chamber of Commerce will be sharing, maybe the school district, if we can get them to share, just to let people know where they can go for information. Then we'll try to keep that information consistent and localized.
Thank you.
I was just gonna make a obnoxious comment about not directing people on to North 11th Street, if possible, as a detour. That was it.
So we have a few different options for motions.
Mayor, Councilor Bisco had her hand up
Oh.
first, then Andrade, and then Nielsen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see any of those hands up. For some reason, the hand symbol got really
Very
small.
small.
Yeah, it's out there.
Councilor Bisco.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was surprised to hear about this development occurring at the Public Works Committee, and the fact that it is not, obviously the project involves Public Works specific, but it also does involve our business, our community, our residents. And it was communications driven. I did not find out about this until it was mentioned at the State of the City address. And I'm concerned that the full council was not involved, well, maybe both, not involved in directing this to the Public Works Committee, but also I'm curious how we got this whole public engagement with some community stakeholders with just 2 members of our Public Works Committee. How did we get to this point? Because it feels like not having the additional 5 members of the council present, it just feels like it did not provide a full interactive opportunity with those chosen stakeholders. So I just have a lot of questions about how this landed in the Public Works Committee unannounced, don't know who was invited or why, and didn't know anything about it until the 19th. And now we're seeing reports on it in tonight's meeting. Wondering if staff could comment on that or if the mayor has a comment on that.
We're happy to engage with the council tonight. If there's any comments any council member has, we're happy to fold that into our plan still. There's ample opportunity for the council as a full body to participate in this plan. I directed this to the Public Works Committee. That felt like the most appropriate place to have an initial conversation, to develop some type of a skeleton of a plan, to do some initial outreach, what that could look like with the business community, and to bring something back to the full council. That's been the pattern we've established with the committees of the city council for years now. So that was my decision, my call.
And frankly, I appreciate that we don't have to have these types of minutiae types of conversations for the whole council, whereas it's kind of the purpose of the committees to have these have these conversations, flesh it out a little bit, and then bring it to the council. So I appreciate that myself. Other comments
Well,
related?
two up there that.
Well, related to this court comment?
Mm.
I was just trying to respond.
Yeah, I do.
Councilor Andrade. Councilor Andrade. Councilor Nielsen, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think Councilor Andrade was first, but if she's still struggling, I can say, I just wanted to ensure that we're working in conjunction with Philomath School District for safe routes for those children that are walking. And as far as crossing guards and the safety and the well-being during this construction process of our kids, that our kiddos that walk to and from school, are we working pretty closely with the district then in that regards?
Yes, so we've been talking about this at our Philomath community group meetings for a number of months, really for almost a year. And the superintendent is often in attendance. So yes, we've had conversations with her, and they are on our list of people, entities to keep in contact with closely because of, like I mentioned, buses, walking traffic. Yes, they will be updated frequently throughout the process.
Thank you. And Councilor Andrade.
Thank you for bearing with me. Being in my room means less stable internet. I completely agree. I agree completely with Councilor Bisco. As someone who talks as a council member who, you know, constantly speaks about the importance of communication and the need to improve it, I am personally especially disappointed to not have been allowed to be part of this discussion. Why Public Works Committee? Why not form an ad hoc committee? Why not offer this to all of council members and we kind of form an ad hoc communication for this project committee? I have plenty of questions. Looking here at, let's see, the last sentence before the bullet points, it says, in addition to sharing ODOT and contractor information, the following efforts will be made. To clarify, by whom? The city, the city's staff? Based on what I could tell from the closed captions, because there was only so much that it was intelligible because it's just all garbled, it sounded like it might have also been council members. Like, that just seems really not best practices to offer it to council members of the committee and not the rest of the council members. So I hope I'm wrong. Could someone please elaborate on that?
Well, again, I wasn't at the meeting. I think that some council members who were at the meeting stepped up to help maybe deliver materials, things like that. But I wasn't there, Ruth was. But also, you are more than welcome if you would like to do some of those efforts too. The door is not closed on that. So this is still a conversation. These are things that can be added in if you have ideas, even as we go through the process and we start putting the information out. Send me an email if you see something that goes out and you have an idea for how to improve on it. I think it's going to be a process that's going to change as we go through it. There will be some of these things that are successful and some of them may need to be tweaked a little bit to be more successful.
Yeah. I'm just gonna add, just in case there's any confusion, these are efforts that are going to be made in the future. So there's opportunity right now to provide insight, input, comments, feedback on the plan. None of this is being done yet. So we all have the ability to weigh in on this tonight, which is kind of the purpose of bringing it for the council. Councilor Clausen.
Yeah, I would just like to add that what's summarized here are a number of suggestions that were made in the meeting. And I think it was entirely appropriate that this initial discussion took place in Public Works. It was a less formal setting. It was very comfortable for the business people who chose to attend. And it was also conducted at a time that was convenient for those individuals to be here. So I very much appreciated the fact that it was held at a committee level and then subsequently moved to the full council as is appropriate. But as the mayor just stated, there's certainly an opportunity for council members to comment now.
Councilor Lowe.
Trying to figure out how I want to address this. To me, this illustrates one of the differences among counselors. From my point of view, what we have here and what city staff have done is exactly what we would expect. I talk a lot about the city manager council relationship. And I have for myself, I have an understanding of what that means. I think there are other points of view that say we need to micromanage, we need to be more involved in deciding for ourselves really what we hire the city manager and his staff to do. I really think there's a fundamental basis for a lot of the so-called communication issues and so on in that. If we don't accept what the city manager says or what the staff does, prepare us to get us information so we can have a discussion at the city level, at the committee level, then, it kind of goes against the whole point of the relationship. We have committees to handle some of the work that the full council has. Nothing is necessarily settled in those committees. Recommendations are made, as you know, they come back to the full council and then weigh in on them. That's you're weighing in now. So I see nothing wrong with the way it's happened. I would want the city council, the city manager and his staff to do as much pre-work as possible. That's the people we hire, and that's what I expect. So I have absolutely no trouble with this. I'm not disturbed by it. I think it's just perfect. I do take issue with the fact that her suggestion to try to spread the narrative that somehow there's something not right. And that's what comes across from the discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Lowe. Before we go back to the folks on the screen, anybody vote? And Councilor Andrade.
To clarify, I know what the city manager council form of government is. I understand that things happen in committees, and when they get brought to council, it's not necessarily what's going to happen. And yet the point is only three council members had the opportunity to be there. 2 of them were there. The rest of us were excluded. Not to mention, it is campaign season. It feels weird. It feels weird. Who, again, to Councilor Bisco's point, who was invited? Was it only chamber businesses? How did we make sure that we also reached out to non-chamber businesses? It feels very exclusionary to not have known that this was going to happen. Shoot, I didn't even know because I didn't get that. I wasn't able to go to the State of the City address and had to find out much later when I eventually got the opportunity to take a look at the slides. So my point is, there's a couple points. One of them being, we need to start being able to offer the opportunities to everyone first. Please just send out a straw poll. Are you interested? Cool, let's figure this out. Okay, so that's one. The other is, how are we making sure we're being more inclusive in this communication practice? And I want to make sure, like, this is a plan. So from what I understand, these bullet points are a plan. That's a great starting point. Are we going to see an actual document? Because if so, or like, do I make a motion to amend this? Do I make suggestions? I think the council should get regular updates, and I don't necessarily see that here in these bullets. Same with sharing information with the Philomath Chamber of Commerce for distribution to chamber members. Again, let's share information with non-members.
You have a motion.
Sorry, what was that?
You have a motion. We would
That's
welcome.
what okay, cool. Thank you. That was part of my question was like, this isn't actually really a plan. It's just a list of bullets. So I guess like, are we actually going to have a document of sorts? That's one question.
No, the
No.
intent was to just have the bullet points.
Okay.
A guide for staff to move forward with.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you. That's all I needed to know about that. Do I need to make a motion to add a bullet to this list?
Absolutely.
So no consensus. Okay, got it. I would like to make a motion that non-chamber businesses are also regularly informed.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Councilor Bisco. So we have a motion made by Councilor Andrade and seconded by Councilor Bisco. So any further comment? Councilor Lehman.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question for Councilor Andrade. What's the method that you're going to propose for doing the outreach to non-chamber businesses? Just out of curiosity.
That is an excellent question. I personally do not know. I am not a communications person. I just kind of learn as I go. But my guess would be to, actually, I really don't know. I was hoping that staff would have ideas on how to do that.
Chelsea has her hand up.
I think one of the first comments I made was doing a mailing to kind of kick everything off, and doing that in a as large as seems appropriate radius of the downtown area to capture all the businesses and all the residents. So that's going to be non-chamber businesses. That's going to be everyone who's in that general area that might seem like they're impacted, and then selecting some additional folks who are not, even like the school district, even though they might not be in that general area, they're obviously going to be impacted. And so that's the intent, is to send out information to all of those folks and let them know, here is where you can find information. So in essence, hopefully they're going to sign up for our newsletters and go to our website, follow our Facebook page, and that they're going to be regularly updated with everyone else.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you.
So I see Councilor Bisco had her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to, a couple questions. It sounds like Chelsea was referencing what is, I believe, known as the Philomath Community Network. It's not the first time that and that was in response to Councilor Nielsen's comment about the school and safe routes to school discussion as it relates to this project. This is not the first time that particular gathering of folks, which is a pretty extensive group of community representation, has come up and has exhibited influence over the business of the city. I would like to ask that we have some sort of record of what's going on in those meetings, because I think that's a place where we can be more transparent in what's going on in our community.
We have a motion. Council. Sorry, we have a motion when we're discussing that motion. So I welcome this idea a little bit later, but right now it's not really germane to this point at this point in time.
And so, Mayor, I'm assuming you're going to afford me the opportunity to continue this conversation. Absolutely. Anytime outside of an existing conversation, it's super helpful. And what is an existing conversation for clarification?
Let's just finish this motion. You can bring it up at any time when your hand is up and when I call upon you.
So I'll keep my hand up, so when we've concluded this motion, I can finish my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. So any further discussion about the motion at hand? Councilor Cobb.
Just a question. I know it was discussed during the committee meeting, the idea of personally walking around information to businesses, although I don't see it specifically laid out here. Is that something that staff will be undertaking?
It's the first bullet point. So providing and distributing the business survival guide. Chelsea and Ruth have put together a really nice multiple page kind of a brochure that's got information, all the contact information. We've kind of been waiting for the contractor to get officially on board so we gather that contact information and present that. And the hope was to distribute those individually to all of the businesses throughout town. We would be reaching out to the city council, planning commissioners, park board, I mean, whatever volunteers we can get to help with that effort. And it'd mostly be, again, just handing those out, letting people know that there's a project coming and getting them the contact information. So that's captured in that first bullet.
Thank you very much.
So to the motion at hand. Nowhere in here do we talk about the chamber, about focusing only on the chamber. We talk about other businesses as well.
The only thing really there, Mayor, is we were planning, and this got brought up actually during the Public Works Committee meeting, was to stay after the chamber meetings.
Right.
They do a monthly luncheon, and staff agreed that we would stay after for, half an hour, 45 minutes, just to answer questions of the businesses or anybody that was there. There's honestly a lot of non-business community members that go to those meetings as well. So we just thought that'd be a given time. We could advertise those times. So whether you're a chamber member or not, you could come and just kind of have a free for all at city staff to ask questions at that time.
Are you be putting this information on Facebook so that non-chamber members will see it? Advertising. Like
Once
that?
the plan's approved, then we'll promote it through the city newsletter, on Facebook, on the website. This will be on the project page. The intent is, here's the efforts we're going to make. We are limited in our staff, and this is the cherry on top of the icing and on top of the cake. ODOT is doing the cake. ODOT is doing the public outreach. The contractor has responsibilities to do outreach and engagement as well. These are the additional steps the city is taking so that our city businesses are informed of what's happening. And so with that, we will be notifying all people that live in Philomath or are in Philomath, but the focus of this plan really was about engaging the business community and Philomath community about the progress here. But this is not going to be the only communication. This is the city going up and beyond to make sure that the project is successful and has as least negative impact on our businesses as possible. That was really the focus of this effort.
Are we going to be focusing our efforts primarily on the chamber businesses, or are we going to be?
We make no distinction between chamber business or non-chamber business. And again, other than the convenience of meeting right after the chamber meeting, I don't believe there's any reference into this document as to whether a business is a chamber member or not.
Councilor Andrade.
Thank you. This is all great. I want to make sure the after meeting of the meeting after the chamber lunch, I would like to verify that that will be free, because I know that you have to pay in order to go to chamber luncheons. And I think that cost can be a barrier to some. And I understand the convenience of the chamber and everything, and using the chamber as a means to get information out. And also, I think it's very important that we identify those barriers to sending out information by the city. And so could someone please verify whether that meeting after the chamber lunches will be free?
Anybody can attend. Yeah.
And it's free because anybody can attend, even if they don't have them.
Yes, it's free. Yes, it's free.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Councilor Cosmo.
I'd just like to clarify a couple of points. When the attendance at the chamber lunch, that $10 fee is to pay for lunch. So if you didn't want to eat lunch, you wouldn't have to pay anything. And you are no more excluded from the Public Works Committee than I am excluded from the Inclusivity Committee or the Police Committee.
Thank you. So then, so we have a motion on the table. Can you just repeat the text that was proposed to be added?
That non-chamber businesses regularly be informed.
Okay, and we're not going to specify how. It could be Facebook, it could just be through letters. It's fine.
It sounded like Councilor Andrade was good with the methods that they were going to be notified. Is that correct, Councilor Andrade? Just wanted to specify that we're going to make sure that we do that. with
Yeah,
all.
basically just, I want to make sure that, you know, instead of it implicitly being that we're reaching out to non-chamber businesses, the fact that we talk about reaching out to chamber businesses, I want to make sure that non-chamber is included in there as well.
Any other suggestions to this communication plan?
So Mayor, I do have a comment to this motion.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So just a point of clarification, the Chamber of Commerce is in fact a member-based organization. If you were to attend or you were to look at their invitations, it's actually $20 for non-members at this time to attend lunch. It doesn't necessarily imply that you can attend without paying for that lunch. And so I don't know that it's an intentional barrier, but it certainly could be interpreted as one. And I do think it's important that we make the extra effort. I know some of our Main Street businesses are not part of the chamber. The reasons they choose to not be isn't necessarily our concern as much as making sure that we are communicating with all of our business community, especially those that will be impacted directly by this project. So I'm a little hesitant. May I please? I'm a little hesitant.
Nobody's saying anything at all.
I think there was an echo.
Okay, it might just be feedback that I'm hearing then. I'm a little hesitant for us to piggyback on the back of a Chamber of Commerce event, just for that reason. And if we're going to do that, then I think overcompensating in that space to ensure that it's very clear that it is open, it's a non-fee situation, and it is not specifically just chamber members would be important.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to add this language to the bullet point. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Done. Okay. Any other things you would like to add to this bullet list or comments? Councilor Causey.
I move to improve the Streetscape project communication plan as amended and direct staff to move forward with communication efforts for the Downtown Streetscape project.
Second.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Lowe. Any further discussions on this particular point? Councilor Lisco, I will get to your other comment after this, but if you want to comment on this, it's fine. Go ahead if you do want to comment on this. No, Councilor Andrade.
To clarify, we can still make amendments.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, and we can make amendments now because the approval has been made. Okay, cool. I would like the council to also get regular reports, regular updates from the outreach meetings and such.
You want to make that in the form of a motion?
Thank you, sorry. I move that we add language to the plan that ensures that city council receives regular updates as well.
Okay.
I second that motion.
We have a motion made by Councilor Andrade and seconded by Councilor Bisco. I see that Chelsea wanted to just weigh in.
I just have a question. So we do have that we'll be sharing that information through the city newsletter, weekly email. Is there something in addition to that information, those updates that we'll be giving that you are asking for? Just for verification.
Thank you for that question. I guess having those sent directly to us would be helpful. And to have so like the results of your talks after the chamber meetings, you know, of like the questions people ask and stuff like that. I don't know how long you intend the communication to be in the monthly newsletters or excuse me, the weekly newsletters and stuff, but basically summaries of how those meetings go and any other kind of outreach meetings you have would be nice. And of course, just of like, you know, questions that community members have. And yeah, that kind of information so that we know what to be on the lookout for and help problem solve as well.
Okay, thank you. And so let Chelsea respond real quick.
We don't necessarily have someone there who's taking minutes, like as a public meeting. But in the past, when I've done projects like this, what I like to do is if questions are coming up and they seem like questions that everyone would want to know the answer to, is just keeping kind of an FAQ, which we can add to our website. We can add FAQ, which can help a lot. Because if people are asking questions, someone else probably wants to know the answer. So I don't know that I can commit us to having the meeting completely written down or recorded, but that is something that we're going to be looking to do is, you know, if it, like I said, if it's being asked, maybe we can just give that answer to people and not have them have to come ask us. So.
Thank you. Councilor Causey.
I'd just like to suggest that we have, perhaps Chelsea could provide a brief update as a part of staff report, rather than having to provide a written documentation of all these various efforts. That seems to me to be unnecessarily burdensome to do that, when at a staff report, you could simply tell us what had happened and where it was documented and direct us to those things if we hadn't seen them for some reason, and answer any questions we might have.
And I'll just note that I'm perfectly happy to read the newsletter, the weekly email, or follow the social media. So I don't really see that we need to add this myself. But let's go ahead and get this conversation wrapped up so we can vote on this, so we can move things forward. It is getting late, and I don't think that we were planning on spending this much time on this. So Councilor Andrade, you had one follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that what Councilor Causey said was more or less what I was asking for. Just she said it better, of just kind of quick staff report, preferably in the form of bullet points of main items, because not all of us are auditory only. Some of us do better visually or combined. So I make that that formal request. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the table. All in favor? What's the language? Can you repeat it? Or I think you have
You
it.
repeat it. I don't know that I wrote it word for word.
Motion was
Mhm.
to add language to the plan that ensures that the city council receives regular updates.
Okay. All in favor of passing that motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, all opposed, I raise my hand and say no. So motion carries 6-1. With that, we have a motion on the table, right? You made a motion.
I would like to, point of order, I'd like to hear Councilor Bisco's motion. If it was a motion, I may have misunderstood that.
Councilor Bisco, is your comment related to this particular document? If not, I will follow up with you after we vote on this.
So yes, it was related to this particular document.
Did you want to speak?
Thank you for permission to do so. So I will restate my concerns about this particular agenda item, which is the Downtown Streetscapes Project business, well, not survival guide, but this communications plan that we're putting together. My first point was that I think it's important that we acknowledge Philomath Community Network, as I understand is the name of it, as a monthly meeting, or generally has been held as a monthly meeting, has had some influence on the business of the city. And therefore, I think it's important that the council is aware that this is a meeting that I've heard happens over the lunch hour, but still is exhibiting influence. And it includes, as I understand it, on any given occasion, members of our representatives from Strengthening Rural Families, the Chamber of Commerce, the Philomath Farmers Market, Philomath Community Services, the Police Department, the Fire District. I'm not sure who Chamber of Commerce is part of them as well, but certainly that is not necessarily the limits of it. I do feel like that's a space where the council should at least be aware of the topics of discussion and or any influence that those discussions might bring to the business of the city. And that's my request, is that somehow we begin to get some sort of update or summary of what those meetings are, whether they're held on a lunch hour or not. They are in fact bearing influence, and that does impact the business of the city in general.
You have a
My
motion?
second, I'm going to just make my comments at this time, if I might, without interruption. I'd appreciate it.
I'm not interrupting. I'm trying to encourage you to make motions.
Well, actually, you are interrupting, and I'd just like to make my statement if I could, please. My second comment is that there's a lot of assumptions that have existed in the space of this current council administration as to the assumed micromanagement of the city manager or the city administration. I'd like to just state for the record that in a council city manager form of government, it still remains the duty of the council to oversee the administration of the city. And in order for us to do that effectively, it's important that we are at least aware of the administration of the city. I don't consider that micromanagement. And my case in point there is, had we known more thoroughly the information around Mill Pond Crossing, we might not be at the situation we are at right now. Had we known more thoroughly the process of the local improvement district and some of the things going on with Heather Glen, we might also not be continuing to hear from the public about concerns that continue to arise about that particular process. And so it's just a matter of this form of government. It's not a matter of micromanagement. And I do take exception to the continued allegations that this is about micromanagement. I do not believe it is. My third comment is specifically about this particular discussion that has come before Public Works Committee. As the Public Works Chair in 2021, at no time did we engage with the public or any public stakeholders. Matter of fact, a particular subject that came, an issue that came before the Public Works Committee was prevented from doing so involving that individual when I was the chair. If I recall correctly, last summer, this council voted the requirement to pre-approve any discussions before committees. And I don't recall that we had a pre-approval of this council for this particular communications engagement to occur at the Public Works Committee. I do feel like it was inappropriate for it to land there in this advanced state. I'm more concerned that additionally, we only had 2 members of 7 of the council present for this discussion. And when it involves engagement with the public, I'll nod to Councilor Andrade's comment as well, especially leading up into a campaign of which there have been allegations behind the scenes in our emails about campaign influence. It does seem a little bit awkward that this has occurred. We're being asked to make decisions on this communications plan this evening, with this being the first discussion that this full council has had. And so I just want to state that for the record, I don't believe this came before the council to approve it to go to Public Works. I also do not believe that without that pre-approval occurring, I have concern that the city manager decided to engage in public engagement with 2 members of the council, especially on a project of this size and magnitude for our community. I don't know that I have any motions out of that space, except that I think it's important to note that this is about our responsibility as the council and how we are responsive to the needs of this community as a whole. It is not about argumentation. It is not about micromanagement. It's about best practices in government.
Thank you. You gotta love election season, don't you? With that, we have a motion on the table. I'm calling the question.
Point of order, Mayor. I think that comment was unnecessary, and I think that was.
I'll retract it. Thank you. I'm going to call the question. And then if anybody wants to challenge that, please let me know now, and we will vote on that. Okay. All in favor of passing the.
Excuse me, Your Honor, if I may make one clarifying comment. Councilor Bisco referred to an individual who was prevented from speaking at the Public Works Committee, but it's important to note that that individual had engaged counsel and he did not speak because of that.
And point of order, Councilor Causey, that's not the individual I'm speaking of, but thank you for correcting what you don't know what I was speaking of.
Thank you, Councilor Bisco. So we have a motion on the table can we repeat what are we voting on exactly?
Voting on approval of the Streetscapes project communication plan as amended and direct staff to move forward with the communication efforts for the downtown Streetscapes project.
Thank you. So all in favor of passing the motion as amended, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Okay, so we have a motion passes 6-1. With that, we should take a break. Just take a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 8:50.
when they get to track. It's good. It's fun.
I think it was one of the notes. Which is for relationship crisis. I just heard that.
Excellent. Are we back?
Not quite. I'll get there. Video set.
Okay. Okay.
Recording is restarted.
Okay. So just
Oh, no, it's not.
Oops, I don't see it.
No, it's not.
okay. Welcome back to our city council meeting. Next, we're going to go to our tree board vacancy. We're going to get to our reports quickly, and then we do have an executive session scheduled tonight. So just wanted to call folks' attention to that. We have a tree board vacancy and city staff.
Yeah, so Laura Hendon's been serving on the tree board. Her schedule at work has changed. Kind of looked at different dates and times, but looks like she's just wanting to step down at this time. Appreciate her service to the community. And again, to the council, just coming in and requesting that we leave that vacancy open until we get to the first of the year. We'll just promote it with the other openings.
Okay. So, Councilor Causey.
I move to accept Lori Hendon's resignation from the tree board and direct staff to advertise the vacancy in December for appointment in January 2023.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. So next we have a council report from Councilor Andrade on Inclusivity Committee.
Yes, so the Inclusivity Committee report that's in here is from the August 23rd, 2022 meeting, and that was what I was trying to talk about at our last meeting before the meeting adjourned. So I included it here, even though none of it is relevant. But then I have a counselor report, mostly to do with Inclusivity Committee related stuff, like Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I do not know if this got recorded or not, but there was a speaker, Dr. Michael Benitez Jr. He was absolutely incredible. It was live streaming at OS. It was an event, celebration by OSU and the city of Corvallis, and Mayor Traber did a signing of a proclamation, but that happened the signing happened right as our meeting started. So I missed that. But before that, there was a land acknowledgement and some speaking by some of the students. And then, like I said, Dr. Michael Benitez Jr., absolutely amazing. If it's recorded, I highly recommend going to Facebook and taking a look at it. Also, happy National Hispanic Heritage Month. Highly recommend this, HispanicHeritageMonth.gov. It has a bunch of really cool resources from the Library of Congress, National Archives and Records Administration, the National Park Service, Smithsonian, so many internet resources, and happy Queer History Month. That is the month of October, celebrating LGBT history, as stated on OSU's website. Queer History Month is observed during the month of October in the US to honor National Coming Out Day and the first march on Washington by LGBT people in 1979. The Pride Center aims to educate the OSU community on LGBT history and coming out through events and programming through the whole month of October. So be sure to check out their website as well. As a reminder, if you are like me and have not yet taken the COGS survey for staff and elected officials, there's a survey on to help shape the future of our regional bias response system, something that we've been talking about every once in a while over the past couple meetings. So that is due October 14th. So be sure to take that. And then as we heard earlier about the Justice System Improvement Program and the Community Safety Forum coming up. And then also on another note, I just want to clarify earlier statements made that I know a lot of things aren't done intentionally. The point is there are things that don't look good, and being able to take a look, step back objectively and take a look at something and recognizing, you know, trying to see things through different lenses that will help build empathy and empathy for different situations and help understand why it is that people see things the way that they do. And so a lot of my statements I made earlier, I still stand behind them, and also want to recognize the fact that I understand that people don't necessarily do the things they do intentionally, but intention is not the same as impact. And the impact is what we have to deal with regardless of good intentions. So just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Councilor Lowe, you had a comment or a report?
Well, it says so in the agenda. We are behind the curve today. Yeah, so at the Finance and Admin Committee meeting, we looked at the city manager performance evaluation schedule, something that we do every year. And so we reviewed what we had done last year, determined that it was working fine the way that we had it. Wasn't anything materially different that we needed to do. So we wanted to make that announcement that we're going to be doing that. And I think we're going to, help me, if we're going to do that in the November meeting, and then the results for December, I think was what our,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. So there's, yeah, so I think there's, it'll be done online again, I believe. Is that the way we're doing it?
Excellent.
Can I make some recommendations for some specific dates? And just run those by the council.
Yeah,
So I'm looking to complete my self-eval and the staff 360 evaluation by the 20th of this month. And we'll get the survey prepared and out to the city council, and would like to get results back by November 3rd. Following that, so it's a couple of weeks, and that'll give me a few days to pull that together in preparation for the meeting on November 14th.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. And Chris, you have a staff update?
I do. So a couple topics. Did want to give a just a couple high level things. You've hopefully seen leaf pickup dates have been set. First date is October the 20th. That's in the newsletter. Appreciate the good work that Ruth and Chelsea put in that newsletter. There's a lot of good information there, the dates and times, and then that weekly email that Ruth puts together is really insightful with all this kind of information. Makes these monthly reports a little bit less onerous. So thank you for all that extra work that staff puts into those. I did want to give just an update on Mill Pond crossing. It's a major topic that we're dealing with almost daily at this point. Did want to report DEQ has approved the 1200C stormwater permit. Basically allows them to, gives them the green light to do excavation for phase 2B. If you saw, they got a little bit of work done over the weekend, clearing brush and preparing for those home sites on the east side of 16th Street. Homeowner updates have been happening more frequently. Appreciate the efforts of Mill Pond Crossing. They sent updates or posted updates to doors on the 16th, the 22nd of September, and then also again on the 6th and the 7th of October. Some nice kind of thorough kind of what's happening right now, and then looking out to the future and giving residents a little better expectation for the future development of that subdivision. Stormwater plan has been approved by Benton County and the city. Was going to be here for signatures today, but the print shop was closed, so it'll be here tomorrow, or it'll be to the county tomorrow for signatures, and then come to the city Public Works for final signatures. That's going to allow for completion and connection of the temporary storm drain, which is on the east side of 16th Street, to connect that through to the south side of Chapel Drive. That in turn will allow for filling in the ditch on the homes, the north side of Timothy, and finishing up the excavating there for those backyards, including at least in some of the residences, a retention wall to get added in. The property lot line adjustments, survey's been out. They came out the first time. They need to come out a second time on Monday. And then all the surveys will be completed. The deeds will all be completed. Those will be forwarded to the owners. That'll be the owner's responsibility to review those deeds, check with lenders as necessary, and to sign those deeds. Once those are returned, Mill Pond Crossing will have those recorded. The city will get notice of or record of those, and proof of payment for properties that lost property. So lot line adjustments are getting close, maybe a few weeks out still. Some of the flood elevations were mentioned on the north side of Timothy. That work to add some fill material into the crawl spaces is scheduled for this Wednesday. Again, when the surveys are out next Monday, they'll come and update the certificates, the elevation certificates, and get that issue resolved with the city and FEMA. The plan, kind of looking out a little bit, is to have 16th Street repaved at the end of this month. They'll be done with all of their additional water and sewer connections, essentially done tearing into the new road, and they'll be repaving that end of the month. They've already given residents notice kind of right now going forward, and then they'll give notice again as they get a little bit closer. So that's Mill Pond Crossing. Again, feel like they're getting around the corner. I think I announced already that the funding from DEQ was approved. They've not actually received the funding yet, but once that funding is received, then they'll commence again with the ongoing testing and getting the plans put together for mitigation of the homes and the existing homes on the west side of 16th Street. So that's Mill Pond Crossing. On North 11th Street, I wrote out a few notes, so you'll have to excuse my reading a little bit here. I want to make sure I covered everything. It was mentioned about the conditions of approval. Condition of approval number 8 states, all public improvements shall be installed and dedicated prior to final plat approval, or the applicant may provide financial guarantees acceptable to the city. This project was split really into 2 parts as far as public infrastructure goes. Pippa Lane on 11th Street. All the Pippa Lane improvements were completed prior to final plat approval and issuing the first permit, which was on November 6, 2019. So we didn't require financial guarantee. We just withheld signing the final plat approval, which was fulfilling condition of approval number 8. The 11th Street improvements we're going to be taken care of with the North 11th Street LID. As I've stated previously, a draft of the non-remonstrance agreement was prepared for Heather Glen subdivision owner Phil Dowd to sign, but it was never executed. Signing the non-remonstrance agreement at that time would have satisfied the condition of approval in its entirety, placing Mr. Dowd in the same situation as the Knutsons and their developments on the east side of North 11th Street. Because that non-remonstrance agreement was not executed, the condition of approval remains unmet, and the city is holding up any future certificates of occupancy or permits for new construction for lots within Heather Glen until the condition of approval is made by any of the following means: either completion of the improvements by the developer, payment to the city in lieu of improvements for the estimated cost, or an agreement with the city for future improvements to take place. The list of 5 to 15 missing documents cited by Mrs. Knutson in her email are really one and the same document, the one non-remonstrance agreement with Heather Glen, which I've repeatedly admitted that I failed to have executed. Fortunately for the city, the non-monstrance agreement was not executed, and unless Mr. Dowd requests to be treated equally to his neighbors, North 11th Street will get at least some street improvements in the near future. The city engineer has completed the update to the scope and budget for the sidewalk and park frontage, but strongly recommended waiting to go out with the RFP until January, February for this project, just due to financial reasons, and contractors are not very hungry for projects at this time. So that was my report for North 11th Street. I'll just apologize for the confusion there. Those projects are big. There were a lot of moving parts. And again, there was a lot of, as I've said before, there was every reassurance at the time that the city was going to move forward with North 11th Street Local Improvement District. And the fact that the city didn't, I think, shows that the city was reflective of the opinions of the neighborhood up there. But it was a change of course from where we were headed at the time that those decisions were made. And because I like sports analogies, you know, again, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. We've all been there. We've all done that. When you're going back on decisions that were made back in 2019, early 2020, with the information that we had at the time, nothing about that raised any flags or seemed unreasonable to members on the Public Works Committee, members of the City Council, members of staff that were all involved in that process and that approval, not to mention homeowners and property owners on North 11th Street, none of which blew any flags or threw any flags or blew any whistles at the time, to continue with my metaphor. But appreciate the opportunity to give a report back on that, and look forward to continue to answer questions on those two topics.
I have a question, but it's not about those two topics. So I'll wait.
So Chris, just to reaffirm, so you'll be able to give us an update every council meeting, if there's time with council reports on those two neighborhoods as things develop?
I don't know that North 11th Street has a whole lot more to report on until we're ready to go out for the RFP. That will come to the city council when we're ready to release the RFP, or when the RFP comes in. But Mill Pond Crossing, yes, I intend to make that a substantial part of my staff report each month. In addition to, I've requested that Mr. Miller continue to copy me when notices are going on doors. I wasn't getting those notices other than from some of the residents who are sending them to me. So he's added me to that list, and I can forward those onto the councils as kind of just to keep the council informed of the communication Mill Pond Crossing is given to residents. I think that's been insightful and helpful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I was going to mention that I want to go into executive session at 9:15. So that's my plan. Council Dana.
Yeah, I had a question for the city manager about the carbon friendly spaces rules that have come down, and specifically any steps that are needed to be taken by the council to address some of the code changes that are going to be required by that. And second, it's been stated in here multiple times that we have to make land use planning decisions based on the laws that were on the books at the time, and that we can't impose changes after the fact and hold the developer responsible. I just want to make sure it goes the other way too, so that since, like, for example, parking is no longer can be a requirement. If, for example, at Mill Pond, building all these now triplexes and townhomes, if the developer could come back and say, oh, it's no longer a requirement for us to have parking beyond one space per unit or something like that. I'm just wondering if they can do that.
That'd require a modification, so it would have to go through, because that decision has been modified once, a major modification once now. So it would require a public process, and they'd have to show a good reason that it met the criteria for a modification.
So wouldn't the executive order from the governor be a good justification?
No.
I'm not trying to sound facetious here.
That would be a reason. Whether that meets the criteria for a modification, I kind of doubt it. Usually that instead you'd say, well, gee, at the time this was put in place, this is what was required, and this is how it's designed.
So we could still do that.
Yeah, and I think that would be true with pick any neighborhood in Philomath or any developed subdivision in the state. You'd say, gee, it was built under a particular set of standards that were in place at the time, and they required X number of parking places, and that's still what's required. You can't remove all of those. That was something that you needed at that time.
I guess my concern is
Without
because,
going through a process.
right, because they haven't been built yet, like
Yeah.
phase 4 or whatever it used to be, phase 4 hasn't been started. I'm just concerned that,
And I would remember that those are not prohibitions. It's a step in on what cities can require. But there's no reason that a developer wouldn't provide that as an amenity. And as you have a crowded right of way, where exactly do I put my collection of Corvair vans if I don't have any place on my property? I put them out on the street. Well, I've got a limited amount of time I can park them there. I have no idea why I said Corvair van.
I think that's giving us a little too much insight.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
And the answer to the first question is right now, it's just at a staff level for analysis. We're looking at different areas of town that we could identify to meet those new criteria. At some point, that's going to come in front of the planning commission and eventually the city council to actually determine what those areas would be, what the impact's going to be. I recognize most people on the council haven't even talked about this yet because it's just pretty
Kind of tied to transit routes.
yeah,
So
there's a lot goes into it. So there's a lot of staff work being done right now to determine what routes could even be justified and could realistically work for those. And we're looking at Albany, we're looking at Corvallis, we're looking at areas that they're locating. And we had a meeting this afternoon at the staff level, just trying to get our heads wrapped around what are the requirements going to be and then where those, logistically and realistically could be identified in the city. So it's staff level at this point. Eventually it'll come through planning commission, city council.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, and Council Andrade, I was gonna ask you to be efficient with time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that threw me off. Councilor Bisco, do you want to go first?
Councilor Bisco, same request.
Yeah, so to city manager's report on North 11th Street, I'm just curious how many homes in Heather Glen are still under any building permits or certificates of occupancy. My understanding was there wasn't very many, so I'm wondering if you can comment on how many homes are still left outstanding out of the 11 for both either certificates of occupancy or building permits. And then also I wonder if you could clarify on the RFP that you are talking about coming out in February, if it is for the street improvements. My understanding is the council moved a sizable amount of the funds for that street improvement into the ODOT project, and wondering where those funds will be replaced from.
So I believe 8 of the homes have been completed, have C of O. So I believe there's 3 outstanding still. And the majority of the work on 11th Street is going to be the sidewalk, which will be used for the from the grant. It'll be water, some storm, and the rest will be some additional street funds that is left over. I just got the estimate from the engineer last week when I was out, so I need to dive into a little bit closer, and I'll do that work before I come to the city council with the RFP.
Thank you.
And Councilor Andrade. You're muted.
Thank you. It took me a moment to recollect my thoughts. Anyway, it sounded like you were reading off of something, and it would be great to see that report written. I appreciate the oral report. But again, for someone like me who does better visually and or with both visual and oral presentation, I would greatly appreciate seeing that in a written document. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go into executive session. And I have a statement here that we're going to be discussing, or per ORS 192.6602E, we're going to discuss real property transactions. And I have a statement that I read every time we go into executive session. Thank you for coming. The Philomath City Council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing real property transactions. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, which allows council to meet in executive session to conduct this discussion. Representatives of the news media and designated staff and other designated persons shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No final decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome any waiting audience back into the room. I would remind council members and staff that the confidences in this executive session belong to the city council as a body and not to the individual members. These confidences should only be discussed if the city council as a body approves such a disclosure. If a member or a staff person does not believe that he or she or they may maintain these confidences, then I would invite that member or staff person not to participate in the executive session.
I will not stop.